Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the I See Old People podcast. The I See Old People podcast is a ongoing representation of what it's like to be an older person in Canada, Ontario particularly. I'm 64 years old now. My birthday was 2 weeks ago. And this project is following me from 60 to 70 to see how I change mentally, physically, and culturally. So it's been interesting so far. It's been an interesting 4 years. And I started the podcast when I turned 60 years old on November 23rd, 2019. So now we are at December 13th. 2023. Now, December 13th is quite an important date for me. I quit drinking. This is the drinking episode, by the way. I'm not proud of this episode, but it is a little bit about me and who I am and how I got here. And I think that's what this is all about. I know someday somebody might be going through this as an archive and trying to figure out what it was like to live in the 2020s. At this time in a Western country during this age of madness, and someone might be going through this, and this is just part of the whole picture of who I am and how I got here. So I'm not proud of this episode, but it's where I am. I'm sipping on my Changa tea. I've been regularly consuming Changa tea on a daily basis. It's a mushroom that has been, desiccated down and dried, and you make it into a tea. And I'm trying to decalcify my pineal gland. By accident, I saw my pineal gland. It looked like a star in the middle of my skull. I saw it on a CT scan that I had to check for a problem I'm having with tinnitus. And the tinnitus problem is ongoing, but I am doing two things. I am doing the Changa tea, and I'm starting to go see a chiropractor, a very specific chiropractor who works only with the upper cervical area. So I'm seeing if that might change my tinnitus a little bit. But I've only gone 2 visits, and I must say that I do notice a change, not in the tinnitus, but in me, and so that's positive. So how did I get here? December 13th. Why is December 13th important? Well, it's important because it's 3.5 years now that I have not had a single drop of alcohol. I've not had any type of alcoholic drink whatsoever. I'm very proud of that. It's the longest I've ever gone without alcohol since I was 16 years old, and I'm very proud of it. It was very, very difficult to do. It took me a lot of time to do it. It took me a lot of steps to get here. So I'm glad that I'm sitting on high up on the mountain, but it took me a long time to get up here, a really long time. It was very difficult. I didn't come from a home where there was drinking in the house. It was very unusual. My parents might have a drink on an occasion like Christmas time, Easter, maybe a summer barbecue, out at camp, an event like that. It was really rare. You never saw alcohol in the house on a regular basis. So it was not something that I grew up with. I certainly didn't have parents who abused alcohol in any way whatsoever. So why did or how did I get there? So I started out, I think just like everybody else, probably around 17, 18, maybe having my first couple of beers out. When I was young, the drinking age was 18. So you could probably, I did, not probably. I would get into a drinking establishment when I was 16. So, but that was a beer. That's how drinking was back then. It wasn't anything. I think when I went to university is when it really started. I don't believe I really had any issues with alcohol whatsoever when I was in high school, except maybe that time I did drink some pina colada mix, a coconutty sweet mix, and mixed with rum. I've never had one since. I was so sick afterwards that the smell of pina colada is actually turns me off completely. It's just gross. but I was quite young, and that's probably the first time I ever got drunk. So that was an unfortunate event, although fortunate in the fact that I never go near a pina colada or a sweet drink at all, even later in my life when I was drinking a lot. So I really started to realize that I was drinking too much when I was probably in my middle age, when I was about 40. My father passed away when I was 40. I was starting to get into the wines. I was thinking I was a sommelier. I was trying to match wines with meals and talking about tannins and talking about depth and character and notes in the wine. But at the same time that I was doing that, I was just drinking more and more of it. And I became very, very conscious of that. I was drinking an incredible amount of wine. I was getting very heavy. I was starting to get really heavy, and wine just became such a part of my life. Never did a wine bottle ever go back in the fridge. Never did it ever get corked and be put underneath the counter. It always was consumed, and it became worse and worse. So it was probably about 15 years ago that I realized, so I would have been about 40, 48, 49, that I really had to quit. Drinking wasn't good for me. It was becoming all consuming. It's all I wanted to do. And I did it a lot. And I offended a lot of people along the way. I fought a lot with my wife. I offended my children. It was not a really good time for me. So I did start to try to quit. I made a number of efforts. I went 8 months at one point back in 2012. So that was the first time I ever quit for an extended period of time. And I just did that all cold. Like I didn't go to AA or anything. I just stopped drinking. I read some AA literature, and I started to read a lot on the internet about drinking. But I really just did it on my own. And after 8 months, I did relapse, and I relapsed quite badly to the point where I continued to drink again then for a number of years, probably 8 years after that, just drinking steadily. And then I went on a trip to Thailand. And in Thailand, it's not known for its wines, but Thailand is known for its heat. And we were there for 3 weeks, extremely, extremely hot. And the water was not safe to drink. So we started drinking beer to hydrate. And we drank a lot of beer. I drank a lot of beer. And I got a real taste for it. So at the same time, what was happening back in Canada was the craft brewing phenomena. So all of a sudden, there's these craft breweries opening up all over, and they're making these IPAs, which are Indian Pale Ales, and they're making them with really high alcohol content. So I started drinking beer with 6.5, 7, 8. 8.5. It got as high as 11, where they have to call that barley wine in the States, but in Canada you can still call that a beer. So I'm drinking 11% beers. I'm getting fatter and fatter, and I've really become addicted to beer. So that's what happens after that trip, and that really starts to take me down because I'm starting to realize that I'm no longer in control of my life. So I decide, again, it's time to quit. And so this time, though, I go to AA. So I start going to AA, and I quit again for 8 months. 8 months again. That's my magic number. So 8 months, and then I relapse. I'm on a trip again in Halifax. I relapse. I'm ashamed to say this, but I don't remember 3 of the 6 days that we were in Halifax. So not only did I relapsed to the point of just an obscene amount of alcohol consumption. So that's going on. I get back home from Halifax, and I try really, really hard not to drink. I'm thinking it's the geographical cure. Oh, I drank there, but I'm not going to drink here. Well, that lasted till about Wednesday, and then I started drinking here again. And again, what happens after a relapse is you just go into it in earnest. You just start, you just making up for lost time. So that happened, and then I only went about 4 or 5 months that time, maybe 6 months. and I decided to go back to AA, and I started again, back to AA. In fact, I was going to pick up my 9th month chip, even though I had relapsed in Halifax. I went into a meeting, and when I stood up, I said, no, I need to take the promise chip. I relapsed, and I was proud of my honesty in that moment. I would have felt horrible going up there and taking that 9-month chip after relapsing. So that's kind of where I was at with that. And then I continued in that program for quite a while, and then COVID hit. I started the podcast. I was sober when I started the podcast in November 23rd of 2019, and it would have been probably March of 2020 that I relapsed again. And that was probably the worst relapse ever, because I had 2 of my sons here because of the lockdowns. My house is not that large. The 4 of us started to lock heads quite a bit. And the damage from that event is still ongoing, as I'm still estranged from one of my sons that was here at the time. So it was a really bad one that time. It's funny, I had been so good again. I had been close to 8 months again, maybe 6.5 months again. And I'm thinking I'm doing really well. And I just decide, okay, well, now I know how to drink like a normal person. And so I'm at a dinner party, and I say, oh yeah, pour me a glass of wine. Everyone is aghast. No one wants to do that. And I convince them all, because, you're as cunning and sly as alcohol when you want it. And I convinced them all that, I was a new man. And well, by the end of that night, I was staggering home, and I was back drinking again. And I did that for quite a while, until I went out west, and I left my home here, and I went to a 90 and 90 days. So I went to AA meeting for 90 straight days. 3 months in a row, I went to a meeting every day. Some days I went twice. So that was by the end of that. So that started on June 13th, 2020. And I've been sober ever since. So I'm pretty proud of that. I've stopped going to AA mostly because AA really wants you to kind of stay in that space of regret and anger and sadness. And I just needed to move past it. I don't have an urge to drink anymore. I don't want to drink anymore. So I don't want to go every week or twice a week and sit down and talk about all my problems with drinking. I'm doing it right now. This is kind of my birthday talk right now, because I never had a chance to do that at an AA meeting. So it just happened to be that I was never there on June 13th, where you kind of sit back and talk about your life experiences. It's called a birthday meeting, because in AA they think of your birthday as the day you quit drinking. So in AA, my birthday is June 13th, 2020. When I gave up alcohol and I became a new man. So my real birthday is November 23rd, 1959. So I had a new birth date on June 13th, 2020. But I'll never forget that date. And here we are 3.5 years later. And when I walked into that first meeting in Winnipeg, I could have never even imagined that this would be the case, that I would be talking right now 3.5 years later and never having a single sip of alcohol. So I'm really proud of that. I hope to ride out my life without ever drinking again. I've gone on a number of trips now without drinking, so that idea of leaving my safety of my home and security of my home and going somewhere else and then being tempted and then falling to that temptation, I've gotten by that 3 times now. So I don't even worry about that anymore. I don't worry about being in an environment where I think I'm going to slip, because I just don't have any desire to drink. My life is so much better without alcohol. Nothing else can really be said other than that. It's just fantastic compared to the life I led at one time. So I'm just continuing to function right now in a sense of trying to stay sober, trying to get rid of this pineal gland calcification, and trying to get rid of this tinnitus. This tinnitus is absolutely driving me mad. So I found this chiropractor that seems to really be helping, and I'm going to continue with that. I'm going to go for a visit with him today, which will be my third time to see him. And then I'm going to continue seeing him right through the holiday season as much as I can, and see if I can get a jump on this. It hasn't changed my tinnitus at all yet, but something else has changed in me, and I'm not sure what it is. So I'm going to continue with these two programs, the Changa tea and the chiropractic adjustments, and see if they can help me. And I will keep you informed whether they're helping or not. Otherwise, I continue to deal with the age of madness on a day-to-day basis. I'm not as worried anymore as I was. I do think that there are going to be some tough times ahead, but I'm not going to lose today because of the thought of what may come later. So I am trying to live each day to the fullest and live life and love the people around me and love myself as well. And I made a few steps in that direction, loving myself, by putting alcohol back in the cupboard and leaving it there, and not even thinking about it anymore. So it's been a great change for me. I'm a grateful person. I certainly still have some resentments. I have issues that I need to deal with in life as far as mentally, especially with depression, although this year has been so good compared to other years. So I just think it's the getting away on a regular basis now that's making a big difference. Traveling south and getting that sun in the middle of the year is making a big difference for me. So there I am, 64 years old, 3.5 years sober. Wow, I can't even believe it when I say it out loud. 3.5 years sober, and nothing but the future looks bright, and I'm looking forward to it. So if you've listened to this point, wow, thank you. I love you, and I appreciate you. So I'm going to continue to add content to this on a regular basis, and I really appreciate the time you take to listen. Send me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. Anything you want to talk about, I'm here, and I'm interested in what you have to say. So thanks again, and we will talk to you soon. Ciao.